Slovakia, a small country with a population of just 5.5 million, has found itself at the center of a global power struggle. Remarkably, this little-known nation has become a strategic partner for China, raising the important question, why Slovakia, and why now? This isn't just another diplomatic headline. This is a move that could reshape the European landscape and change the future of international alliances. Slovakia, a longtime member of the European Union, has recently chosen to deepen its ties with China. Why would a small EU-aligned country like Slovakia turn to China, a country so far outside the EU's orbit? The answer lies in economic pressures. Slovakia's economy has been strained by high energy costs and EU policies that don't necessarily serve the needs of smaller Eastern European countries. A recent Reuters article pointed out that Slovakia, which relies heavily on manufacturing, has been struggling with EU-imposed energy restrictions and technology regulations. In contrast, China offers a more flexible and resource-rich partnership that Slovakia desperately needs. By aligning with China, Slovakia gains access to vital infrastructure projects through China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is reshaping global trade and providing new routes for economic cooperation. Unlike the EU, which can sometimes be bogged down by complex regulations, China is quick and results-oriented, characteristics Slovakia finds appealing in its current economic situation. What does this new alliance mean for Slovakia in practical terms? For one, it opens doors to a whole new economic ecosystem. According to a recent report by the Financial Times, joining the Belt and Road Initiative makes Slovakia an essential entry point for Chinese goods into Europe. This not only boosts Slovakia's standing in international trade, but also offers access to China's vast manufacturing and technology sectors. For China, Slovakia is more than just another trading partner. It's a strategic gateway into Europe. With Slovakia positioned centrally in Europe, China gains influence without the complicated political baggage that comes with forming partnerships with larger EU powers. For Slovakia, this alliance means less red tape, fewer restrictions on market access, and easier pathways to new opportunities. A Bloomberg report highlighted that Slovakia's industries, which have struggled within the EU framework, could now access Asian markets with fewer obstacles. Beyond trade benefits, Slovakia's partnership with China also comes with immediate diplomatic perks. Chinese officials have made it easier for Slovak businesses and citizens to engage with China, offering visa-free travel and simplifying the establishment of new business connections. This fast-track access to one of the world's largest economies gives Slovakia a significant edge, one the EU can't offer in the same way. But what does this mean for Slovakia's role within the European Union? Slovakia's decision to partner with China could signal a potential shift in the balance of power within Europe. For years, smaller EU nations have felt sidelined by the Union's policies, which often prioritize the needs of wealthier, larger countries. Slovakia's move could serve as a message to the rest of Europe. It's possible to challenge the status quo. This shift is likely to inspire other Eastern European nations to question their dependence on the EU, potentially leading to a broader realignment. International partnerships are shifting. The Wall Street Journal recently highlighted growing frustration in Eastern Europe with EU policies, suggesting Slovakia's recent move could trigger a domino effect across the region. If other countries follow Slovakia's lead, the EU's internal dynamics could be permanently altered. China's investment in Slovakia is strategic. Instead of attempting to influence the entire continent, China is targeting smaller nations like Slovakia. The Economist suggests this tactic is part of a broader diplomatic strategy, allowing China to expand its influence without directly confronting major EU powers. Slovakia, geographically positioned at the crossroads of Europe, represents a key foothold. By forming an alliance with Slovakia, China expands its presence within the EU, bypassing the political complexities of engaging with larger countries. This subtle yet powerful move positions China to potentially enhance its influence across Europe. The implications for Slovakia's place within the EU are significant. This move could signal a trend toward greater autonomy for smaller nations. Eastern European countries have long expressed concerns that EU policies don't adequately address their specific economic and political needs. Slovakia's partnership with China could be a declaration of independence, demonstrating that smaller nations can secure their economic futures without relying solely on the EU. Slovak political analyst Milan Nik, speaking to Bloomberg, highlighted the growing sentiment among Eastern European nations that they are often overlooked by the EU. By aligning with China, Slovakia asserts that smaller nations can pursue their own interests without undermining their EU membership. If successful, this partnership could inspire other countries to explore independent alliances, reshaping the EU from within. The EU's regulatory framework has been a point of contention for smaller nations like Slovakia. Stricter rules on energy, technology, and environmental policies have hindered economic growth, particularly in sectors where Eastern Europe has a competitive edge. Analysts note that many Eastern European nations, including Slovakia, have faced significant challenges due to EU restrictions on digital infrastructure and energy policies. China offers an alternative, with fewer regulatory barriers and a more flexible approach to investment, allowing Slovakia to innovate and grow in sectors heavily regulated by the EU. This partnership could revitalize Slovakia's technology and manufacturing sectors, vital to its economy but struggling under EU rules. Slovakia's decision to align with China is not just a response to external pressures, it's an attempt to regain control over its economic future. By breaking free from EU regulatory constraints, Slovakia aims to chart a new course toward prosperity. If successful, this strategy could set a precedent for other European nations to explore partnerships that prioritize national interests over EU mandates, potentially altering the future of the EU itself. Once pillars of its economy, Slovakia's industries now grapple with stagnation. This is largely attributed to the EU's stringent regulations on emissions technology and trade, which pose challenges. Many Slovakian sectors rely on cost-effective solutions not readily available under EU rules. According to a South China Morning Post report, Chinese investments have successfully revitalized similar industries in other countries by providing capital and technical expertise. Slovakia aims to replicate this success by strengthening ties with China, which has already pledged investments in Slovakia's renewable energy and advanced manufacturing sectors. This partnership presents a unique modernization and competitiveness opportunity for Slovakia on the global stage. If successful, Slovakia's collaboration with China could demonstrate that even small economies can thrive through alternative partnerships, potentially inspiring others. However, this decision extends beyond economic interests. A broader strategic calculation is at play, particularly regarding Slovakia's stance on the Ukraine conflict. Slovakia has maintained cautious neutrality, enabling diplomatic engagement with both the EU and China without entanglement in the complex politics surrounding the war. This aligns with China's non-interference policy, making Slovakia a valuable partner. Slovakia's neutrality allows it to foster economic ties with China while preserving diplomatic relations with the EU. This balancing act positions Slovakia as a flexible player in international relations, maintaining an independent path without alienating larger allies. Recently, China offered Slovakia visa-free travel. This gesture signifies trust and provides a practical benefit, facilitating easier movement for Slovak citizens. This rare privilege, especially for EU members, underscores China's growing commitment to strengthening ties with Slovakia. The implications are far-reaching. Slovak business leaders, academics, and tourists will have simplified access to China's vast markets and can form direct, unencumbered relationships with Chinese partners. This access could be a game-changer for Slovakia's economy by reducing bureaucratic barriers and fostering stronger professional and personal connections. While this deepens Slovakia's economic integration with China, it presents a dilemma. By distancing itself from the EU, Slovakia risks alienating its European partners. The potential fallout from this growing alignment with China could be significant. As an EU member, Slovakia enjoys access to crucial EU funding, particularly for infrastructure and development projects. However, this financial support could be jeopardized if the EU perceives Slovakia's shift towards China as a challenge to European unity. Moreover, Slovakia may face diplomatic isolation within the EU, potentially limiting its influence in policy discussions. A Financial Times report cautioned that any EU member straying too far from shared EU values risks reconsideration of its access to funding and trade benefits. Slovakia's balancing act with China presents both opportunities and risks. Short-term economic benefits are clear, but the long-term consequences for Slovakia's position within the EU remain uncertain. Success could position Slovakia as a champion for smaller nations pursuing independent economic policies. However, This approach may face resistance from EU leaders concerned about its impact on unity. Slovakia's decision could either elevate its status as an independent actor or diminish its EU role, depending on the alliance's evolution. Slovakia's example might embolden other smaller EU nations, such as Hungary and Poland, which have sometimes diverged from EU policies, to explore similar independent foreign policy paths. Political analysts, like Dr. Thomas Moro, note a growing assertiveness among Eastern European nations in seeking partnerships aligned with national economic interests. Slovakia's success with China could trigger a wave of independent trade deals across Eastern Europe, reshaping regional geopolitics and challenging the EU's traditional diplomatic centrality. Slovakia's relationship with China exemplifies China's broader expansion into Europe, particularly through alliances with smaller nations. This subtle strategy allows China to gain influence without provoking strong opposition from larger EU members. Growing ties between China and these smaller EU states could reshape Europe's political landscape, creating a more multipolar environment with less rigid alliances. This gradual shift could establish China as a major player in European politics, influencing EU policies through its network of smaller allies. As Slovakia and China strengthen their partnership, Europe's future could look significantly different. This partnership might signal a new era of greater foreign policy independence for smaller nations, potentially altering the EU's power dynamics and the global stage. While raising questions about Slovakia's place within the EU framework, this move also hints at a future where economic partnerships, rather than traditional alliances, define a nation's global role. The evolving Slovakia-China relationship could be a bellwether for a broader shift in Europe's geopolitical orientation, raising the question of whether this marks a new era for the continent.